Hey! Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, or whenever this finds you. I'm your host Chantal, and thank you for joining me on another episode of To Be Confirmed, the latest, hottest podcast series which seeks to answer society's larger questions about race and racism, because often the answer to these questions remain, well, to be confirmed. Tune in, listen, and prepare to be inspired, provoked, and moved as we dive into another episode of To Be Confirmed. Hello! It's been a while, hasn't it? Anyways, I hope that you're well and that you're all blessed, and welcome to another episode of the hottest and latest podcast series, To Be Confirmed. If this is your first time tuning in, hello. Welcome to Be Confirmed, the hottest and latest podcast series which seeks to answer society's larger questions about race with racism, society, gender and politics, because more than often the answers remain to be confirmed. And if you're a frequent listener, welcome back. So today's episode will be an audio-only episode, but it'll be made available across all streaming platforms. So as always, please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and review the podcast. Now, before we begin, I would like to issue a little disclaimer before today's episode, which goes as follows. The views, information, or opinions expressed during the podcast episode are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent any other entity. This podcast episode, including any information shared and my analysis of the information presented, is for educational purposes. Also, this is my motherfucking show, my motherfucking thoughts and feelings expressed authentically. And as I always say, I like to provoke thought, conversation, and racist. And if I've provoked you to some degree, then I'm very, very happy with that. So I would love to introduce our special guest today. I am so chuffed. She's sat right next to me. The guest that I have featured today is on a special episode that I've titled The Art of Activism, Animation, Authenticity, and Action. Kazvare, our special guest, is a writer, illustrator, and graphic designer who is forging a name for herself with her often, in quotation, sassy sketches and searing satire. That was the commentary provided by Grazia. She has also been listed as an inspirational woman by Forbes. Please listen, Forbes, you know. Her work has been featured in Vogue, UK and Japan, and she has also collaborated with major brands such as Adidas and Facebook, and has held a pop-up exhibition at the Tate Modern. Her brand, Kazvare Made It, is home to striking stationery, homeware and accessories. Kazvare Made It combines cultural references and influences in a way that is bold, colourful and with a dash of playfulness. Kazvare Made It stock lists include Selfridges, Oliver Bonus and Scribbler. Kazvare released Stay Woke Kids with Canongate in 2021. Stay Woke Kids is an illustrated children's book for adults covering topics such as white privilege, toxic masculinity, and racism. It employs humour, rhymes, and illustrations to convey big ideas in a digestible way. So in other words, please put some motherfucking respect on Kazvare's name, okay?
That's so funny. What can I say after that,
So, we are currently perched here with our rooibos. Is that how you say it?
Yes.
Yeah?
Perfect.
Oh, fabulous. Our rooibos tea. It's my first time trying it. So please, whilst we spill some tea, buckle in. I've got my trusty box of Ritz crackers to enjoy. So yeah, without further ado, if you're perched in, please put in the comment section what you're enjoying, what you're eating, what you're drinking. And without further ado, we'll get going. In the tradition of the podcast, there'll be an overarching question, which will be followed by mini questions, which will dictate Kazvare and I's conversation. You'll hear our thoughts, feelings, and the such. But I'm going to stop explaining and get to the question. So the overarching question, the big question for today's episode in The Art of Activism, Animation, Authenticity and Action is: the consumption of art allows for spectators to enjoy art, escape reality, and engage with its unique messaging. This can mislead the consumer to view art as separate to the world in which it is created in, rather than a reflection of the world. To what extent should art be recognized as an instrumental tool for society to authentically critique, question, and act to change our realities through the lens of politics, power, and race? So you've heard a lot of me talking. I don't know how long I've been on here for, but I would love to turn to you, Kazvare. So please tell the world about you. Who are you? Well, we know who you are. What do you do? What's your star sign? Where are you representing? And what makes Kazvare Kazvare?
Hi, everyone. Hi, Chantal. Thank you so much for having me today.
You're welcome.
My name is Kazvare. I am a writer and illustrator, and all of the lovely things that Chantal said. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And I was born in Zimbabwe.
Yes.
I lived there until I was 7. Been on this cold isle ever since.
Oh, wow.
Moved around a little bit within, but yeah, basically been in London for the most part.
Yes.
And yeah, I've just had a very varied, so I'm, writer, illustrator now, but had a very varied career before.
Yeah.
Worked in youth, the youth and charity sector.
Wow.
For quite a long time.
Wow.
And then, meandered my way through, and for the past maybe 8 years, I've been doing
That's amazing.
Doing my art full time. So
that is incredible.
So it's a privilege to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
No, honestly, thank you so much for being here as well. I was saying to Kazvare before that I recently, ignorantly, that is a word, recently discovered some of the culture of South Africa being, I'm talking about the region and the country. And I have major love for you guys. I think you guys are absolutely wonderful. Even though I love my West African heritage, I'd like a little bit of a sprinkle of South African in there somewhere. I don't mind which country, but I just want a little sprinkle in there. But anyone that's from Zimbabwe, please, if you're representing, please in the comments down below, share and show your flag. And this has been an episode that has been about 7 months in the making. And as Kazvare and I have spoken, actually, fun fact, when I first met Kazvare, I actually thought the pronunciation of her name was Kazvare. So I remember our first meeting, I was like, hi, Kazvare, how are you? And then I was like, oh, wait, is that how you pronounce it? And you were like, no, but that's okay. And I was like, no, please. Let me get it right. So you got the pronunciation right. But I've been admiring your work, as you know, for a very long time. And I had to get in touch with Kazvare to provide, her unique perspective and to really get into it. And of course, as I've shared with Kazvare previously, I have a lot of love for the region and the nation of South Africa. So any fellow Zimbabweans, please shout and represent your country in the comments below. But without further ado, we'll dive right into the chat. So Kazvare, what thoughts, feelings, emotions come to you when you hear the words animation, authenticity, and action?
I think first, in terms of animation, it's more something that I wish I could do. So if I'm going to internalize it, I think it's something that I wish I could do in terms of my art. Currently, my art is very two-dimensional in its presentation. But I do think it adds quite a fun element to my work.
Your work is great.
Thank you. So that's kind of like the first thing I think of when it comes to animation. And I guess authenticity is being true to who you are, isn't it?
Yes.
And I really hope that's evident in my work.
Yes.
And I always say this, but my art is, I want my art to be a resting place. Yeah. And give space for black people to feel seen and understood. Yeah. And I think authenticity has a lot to do with that because it's my experience as well. I'm not just kind of chatting for the sake of chatting. It comes from like a real place. Of course. Yeah, and I think with action, it's often what you do after you've received a thought or a piece of information. Yeah, it's very active, and it evokes like a sense of urgency and empowerment. Yeah. So taking all of those words, I think those would be the thoughts that come to mind. I love that. Thank you for sharing, Kazvare. Conversely, I had a sort of a sit down and think, and I like to say it's not me if it doesn't involve the power of 3. So that's a word. So in terms of animation, I took the very literal definition from Cambridge Dictionary, which says animation, enthusiasm and energy or moving images created from drawing. So you mentioned the 2D element, models, etc. Or images that are photographed, done by hand or created on a computer. And as you've already
communicated. It's kind of like
so
an ode.
interesting. I didn't even think about all of the other versions of animation.
Yeah. Even when I was
I actually went to just one side of it. Interesting.
But yeah, even when I was looking at it, I was like, oh yeah, that's a valid point. But I guess that's the part of like, I guess when you sort of look in and look at changing your perspective and I guess digging deeper into that piece, you know.
Absolutely.
With authenticity, the definition for that, provided by Cambridge Dictionary, again, is the quality of being real or true, which you touched on straight away. And when I talk about authenticity within the context of the definitions considered, I'm talking personally about the apt and the real and true commentary that you yourself, Kazvare, provide, and the uniqueness of your commentary in that space. With action, definition again provided by Cambridge Dictionary is the process of doing something, especially when dealing with a problem or difficulty. So again, you've touched on that right on the head. And when I talk about action, I'm talking about the necessity for all of us as a society, as people to act, considering our current socio-economic and political climate. When I talk about action, I'm talking about, the context of Kazvare's action in her work to resist and challenge, society. Even myself as a I'd say relatively new creative, that's made her work more public. I find it incredible how you yourself can, create a piece of work. You can get the conception, create a piece of work, and it's there in no time. And I believe that in this piece, when I thought about this episode, when I thought about pulling it together, and when the title came to me, that I felt that, I could learn from you. And I think your work challenges a lot of discourse at the moment. But I hope for those that are listening in, as you listen to Kazvare and I talk more about action, authenticity and animation, that you are also inspired to, think creatively and engage with politics creatively. So, back to you, Kazvare. How did you find your authenticity? Who and what events in your life and creative journey inspired you to bless our eyes with your own work?
I don't actually believe that you find your authenticity. I don't know if that's controversial or not, but I think
that's valid.
I think the process is more getting back to it rather than finding it.
Yeah.
I think as we get older, there's a temptation to actually move away from the things that are really true to us.
Yeah.
Whether that's, finding new identities or whatever it might be. I don't know, based on peers or circumstance or even trauma sometimes, you kind of move away from who you actually are or created to be. Because I say that to say that I feel like I knew what I liked and who I was from a very young age.
That's amazing. That's lucky. I've discovered myself a lot later in life.
Yeah, I'd be interested to hear more about that actually, because I think when I was about 8, I found this is a while ago, but I found a little notebook and it said, when I'm older, I want to be an artist. I want to be a writer.
Oh my God.
I want to be a chef. That one didn't quite work out for me, has to be said. But I think you know what you like, and when you're young, the essence of who you are and what you like, I think is there. And I think it's really important to pay attention to the things that bring you joy and the things that you also enjoyed as a child, because I think that gives you an idea of the essence of who you are. And so that's why I would say that it's not so much finding, but actually going back to.
Oh wow, that's so healing though. It's very like inner child healing, and that's beautiful as well to be able to find that and be like, I've written it down, I've done it. That's incredible. I love it.
And for you though, what were you like as a child? Like what?
Oh gosh, what was I like as a child? Oh my gosh. What was I like? I was very curious. I was very weird. I still am weird. But I had a really huge fixation on history. Anyone will tell you, history buff, like anything to do with history. I could, even to this day, like I will look at someone will talk to me about a really random subject and I'll go down a rabbit hole for days on end researching it. But I always found, actually, ironically enough, I used to write a lot of poems as a young girl. So I guess I always had that writing streak in me, but I never sort of took it seriously. I was very, I guess now I'm an adult, I was very detached from my younger self, but I guess that comes with trauma and what I had to go through as a young girl. But I guess little elements of me were popping out and peeking out, and I guess now I'm really living in the reality where I can actually, put some of my interests to use, really. So that's some of what has really inspired my story. But even to follow on from what you've shared as well, I guess, actually, let me not go off tangent, but furthermore, like I said, I discovered myself further along in my adulthood, and I said this on several episodes of the podcast, but it was the 2020 Black Lives Matter movement that was the catalyst for me. So, even though I was quite ignorant about my racial identity, about race as a whole, so I never really kind of dug into or leaned into my blackness for a very, very long time. But ironically enough, if there were a couple of presentations at school or whatever, I would around race, I'll be the first one to speak about it, which again, looking back, I'm like, wow, if I really went into it at that time, who knows where I could have been then. But that was that. Then I went to university, did a politics and international relations degree, and then I did my dissertation on the Black Lives Matter movement between 2013 to 2018. And I had a particular doctor, and I'm not going to name him, but I have beef with him for the rest of my fucking life. I poured my blood, sweat, and tears into that dissertation. I got it reviewed, and the people that looked at it were like, this is incredible. But the doctor, who was a white man that reviewed it, was like, this piece of work is too polemic to be objective.
That's ridiculous.
Are you kidding me? Basically, for those who don't know, polemic, it just is another word for saying too passionate, which I think as a black woman, to tell a black woman who's writing about the Black Lives Matter movement that the work is too passionate for it to be objective, I think it's ridiculous. And I actually got a lower grade than I thought I deserved for that piece. But yeah, that was a very big character building movement. And again, transitioning into the 2020 movement, I started on the Notes app. So I started writing literally my exact feelings and thoughts. And then that just developed into writing longer pieces and providing more commentary on stuff that just irritated me in the news, really. But, touching on authenticity in a larger space, authenticity, I feel, and we've both touched on it, I suppose, it requires a level of vulnerability in order to connect with yourself. And Brené Brown defines vulnerability as uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. And of course, social justice is emotive. And in my view, emotion can't be detached from the action required to champion social justice issues. In the context of, art, I did a little bit of research. Authenticity also relates to the risk of forgery, plagiarism, which we'll dive on to a little bit later in this episode. And philosopher and critic Walter Benjamin explains in his essay, The Work of Art in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction, that an original piece of work is authentic. And by that, he means that it has a specific presence in time and space and a unique existence in the place it happens to be. Therefore, a reproduction of said authentic piece of work isn't authentic. And I think that's a really imperative factor to take into account. You've got to also look at integrity. I think integrity is also important in looking at, authenticity in the context of art. Integrity looks at the tenacity, or integrity separately as a definition looks at the tenacity of one's morals and honesty. And of course, as we know, we have our own political compasses and our own moral compasses, but morality does vary on the individual, and empathy, which is imperative to social justice, to challenging such oppressive, regimes, isn't a skill that everyone necessarily has. But of course, maintaining a belief system which empowers you to act and create, art, in your case, that challenges injustice, shows the connection, what I feel anyways, between authenticity, action, and integrity. So yeah, I don't know. I feel that's how I feel anyways about that question. Question 4 then. So you choose to create impactful work under anonymity. Was that a decision? What was that decision influenced by? Like a producer tag. Let's start that again. My goodness, stumbling on a Friday. Like a producer tag. How do you mark your work in a way which identifies you as the artist behind your work?
I think, and I hope, when you see my work, you can tell that it's mine.
Yes.
And I hope that, I guess, some of the markers would be the bright colours,
yes,
the black outline,
yes,
hopefully some humour,
yes.
I think those will probably be the markers of my work. funny enough, a friend of mine sent me a random fridge magnet and she said, oh, is this your work?
Yeah.
It wasn't my work, but I could see why she thought it was, because there were some similarities in that. So it made me feel quite nice. I was like, oh, so you can tell when it's, it's got a bit of my flavour. So yeah, I hope there are definitely markers in terms of, looking at my work that you can tell it's mine. But yeah, in terms of like anonymity, I think I like the separation, at least in this time and space. Like I like the separation between me, the person, and the work I put out there. I do, I don't think it's always very easy to separate the artist and the person, because I think they're obviously very linked. Yeah. But in terms of like having my face out there and all that kind of stuff, I basically don't want to be seen. Yeah. And if you see me on the street, like if I've got a bonnet on, like I don't want you to know that it's me. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? You're just like, oh, why is this girl wearing a bonnet on road? Like, I just want to be out there.
Be free.
But like I it's always lovely to meet people. So when I do events and stuff, it's always lovely to meet people and like engage with people in that way.
I guess it's less stress as well for you in terms of interacting with people, and as well for them, because they don't know who they're expecting. So it's like when they have that first conversation, it's like, oh wow, it's a more genuine interaction rather than like build. Because sometimes with certain celebrities, you kind of if you see them, you build that kind of mental image of oh my god, that's what they look like. I think that's what they're going to present, and then you get there and it's a different conversation. But I guess with that anonymity piece, it's like you're saying, when you have those moments where people come up to you, it's more of an organic. I don't know if it's, I mean, you can confirm, but it's more of an I feel it would be more of an organic, more of a less pressured environment to really kind of fulfill whatever projections people kind of have of you.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah,
I agree with that. I like, at least for this juncture of life.
I don't blame you though. I really don't blame you.
I prefer it this way.
I really don't blame you. I would say in response to you, really, in an article written by the Next Cartel, in the context of anonymity, which I thought quite interesting, which I didn't even consider at the time, was that they wrote in their article that anonymity, and we've touched on this already, but it can boil down to the notion that, sometimes society does look at the artist or generalizes the artist as like, the penniless person, the unknown artist, and that sometimes when an artist may taste success or where their work may take off, then society may seem to question, their trust in their motives, or, why is that artist successful? Are they doing it for a particular gain? Which I think can be quite of a weird binary, but I think that can happen in life, isn't it? The minute someone becomes successful, it's like, oh, why are they successful? They're doing it for clout, and that's just a different conversation for a different day. But what I say is, why are people concerned with the success of an artist if the work is evident and provides commentary of a wider issue or a topic, and of course, as you've mentioned already, in terms of in this time and space, anonymity being a protection for you. Further on to this piece in the article that I'm referencing, anonymity can help audiences believe more of the artist's intention and not question, the work at large. Similarly as well, it allows the artist, in this article that I read, anonymity allows the artist to create outside of the limitations placed on them by their individual lives and egos.
Can I say something to that?
Yes.
Actually? One thing that I find really interesting and that makes me laugh when people meet me is that they assume that I'm a man.
What?
So often people are like, oh, I thought you were a man. So that is another interesting piece to me. Like, oh, what is it about what I present?
That's interesting.
That makes you think I'll be a man.
Yeah.
So, yeah. That's...
I never thought. That's really interesting. Really interesting. Wow. That's really weird though. I don't know why. Anyways, people are people, aren't they?
In the comments below.
Yeah. In the comments below.
Let me know.
But furthermore, I think as well, and you've touched on this already, especially in this wow, choking. In this time and space as well, there is an element of safety that needs to be taken into account, especially when we're calling out specific oppressive governments and regimes. So even though I present my work in a way where, I present myself in the fullness of myself, I have to consider, we're living in a surveillance state. So, how do I keep myself safe? And I think, anonymity is one way. And I remember when I first started my activism work, I even considered, is it worth going, I wanted to actually go into an anonymous line of work. I even had a name picked out for myself.
Ooh, what was your name?
It was going to be Activist X.
Oh.
That was what my name was going to be. Yeah. But I was like, no, fuck it. I'll just, put my face and that people need to know what's going on. But also as well, back onto marking your work, defining your work, having your work being identifiable. Of course, if we're talking about, as a business owner, marking your work in a way, marking your work, let's start that again, helps with yourself, marking your work, defining your own work helps you as an artist, helps the audience as consumers to identify your brand. It supports brand recognition, but also allows you to remain memorable, thus increasing your successful business portfolio, which, as you've heard by the bio that I gave Kazvare, it's a pretty successful business portfolio. So for me, as a consumer of your art / activism, I immediately recognize your drawing style. Is there a technical term for it? Like the way that you draw?
Probably.
Okay, I have no idea, but
I don't know.
But
yeah, probably.
But you already mentioned the lines, the bright colours, and ironically enough, I literally wrote vibrant colour scheme in my script, and your wit in articulating your feelings via your trusty speech or thought bubble against a topic. And the thing is, the way that I process your art is I envision it as a Jim Halpert moment from The Office. Do you watch The Office?
Yes.
Yeah, so whenever I see your piece, obviously it cracks me up, but I envision it as a moment where I look at it and I look up to the imaginary camera as there we go again, right, the nail's right on the head. The piece on the Australian referendum with the kangaroos, the Beast and the Beauty piece with the whole rubbish discourse around Georgia Smith's body, all of those. Of course, there's so many pieces of work that you've created that I've time and time again been there we go. But, I guess in all of my spiel, I feel like your work for me as a consumer is a way of saying what needs to be said, but in fewer words, which is ironic because we actually spoke about that earlier today. So yeah, activist art is an art style and defined by Tate Galleries is a form of political or social currency. Actively addressing cultural power structures rather than representing them or simply describing them. Now, a lot of your work demonstrates a clever way of addressing said cultural power structures or schemes, from your artist therapy sessions to the commentary of certain politicians of colour who pander to white supremacy. Boo! Boo! Tomato! Boo! So I would like to ask you, would you define your art? It's one thing me coming here and saying the art of activism, but would you define your art as your version of activism?
I guess it can be seen in that way. I tend to personally shy away from that label. Okay. Because I feel like it suggests a degree of altruism on my part that isn't necessarily my driving force. Okay. So if an activist is a person who campaigns to bring about political or social change, I think it would be a disservice to those who are really on the front lines for me to adopt the same title. I create art to make space for joy even where pain and rage exist. Yes. And for me, it's a really cathartic experience. Yeah. And in many instances, it helps me make sense of the world as well. Yes. And so I share it with the world, also in part for others to feel seen in their space of pain and rage too. Yeah. And so I share it to call out things as I see them. Yeah. And so, I think there's definitely something about taking that rage and using humor to show the absurdity of the human behavior. And one of my favorite quotes of my babe, James Baldwin, it says, to be a Negro in this country is to be relatively James Baldwin quote that says, to be a Negro in this country and to be relatively conscious is to be in a state of rage almost all of the time. Wow. And I think for all of us, that rage has to go somewhere.
It does, yeah.
And so I've been trying to channel mine through illustration.
Yeah.
And in a way that feels the most authentic to me. And so I feel like rage, you can feel rage, and I think it's right and good to feel rage. But also try to make space for joy.
Yes.
Somehow, some way in that.
Yes.
I think two things can be true at the same time.
100%. 100%.
Yeah, so I think even in my book, Stay Woke Kids, many of the topics kind of point to the anger of certain situations.
Yeah.
Especially when you're on the receiving end to them.
100%.
And I think my book doesn't make light of them at all, but it points to the absurdity of the behaviour.
Yeah.
So for instance, one of the limericks in there is called Hold Up.
Oh!
And it's all about a white woman who says she doesn't see colour, but clearly she does. And so when she's navigating through her ordinary day, you can see that she's obviously seeing colour.
Yeah.
And so it just shows that like assertions like that are wildly disingenuous.
Wow. Yeah, it is, yeah. Very disingenuous. Like, don't waste my time with that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I feel like I can understand why some people might think this is activism. Maybe it is activism, but it's
'cause that's how I view it.
Yeah, it's not. I don't know if it's my driving force. I think it's it's more of a cathartic, therapeutic.
It's part of what you do. It's part of your process.
Yeah.
And I think for me, activism is a huge spectrum, and I think that's why I've created this series, The Art of Activism, which there'll be more to be confirmed at time to be confirmed. But the way that I view your work is that, you know, it's there for a time and a place. And I think any type of action, whether that be written, whether that be spoken, whether that be, you know, illustrative, whether that be, you know, marching, that, you know, as long as it's, you know, challenging social political structures, as long as it's, you know, pushing people to act, as long as it's stirring emotion in some kind of way, I think that's a form of activism in my view. So I mean, touching on you know, activism art further on, in a article that I looked at called "The Origins of Activism Art" by Stephanie Graff. The origins of activism art can be seen as early as the 18th century. There's an example provided where in the French Revolution, there's an artist called, please, French people, do not butcher me here. There's a French artist called Jacques-Louis David. That was horrible. I'm so sorry. But they were an active member of the French Revolution to the point where his artwork outraged royals and was banned from an exhibition. And I'm going to touch on later about...
Fantastic.
Sorry?
I love that energy.
Oh, thank you. I'll touch on, you know, outrage a little bit later in the podcast in terms of reception of your work and so forth. But, you know, in terms of activism art, it can be described as works that challenge racism, sexism, authoritarian regimes, and or war. They usually have a common denominator which has a focus on social and political issues with the intent to change or influence public opinion by confronting people with an unjust or problematic status quo. So again, that piece that you were talking about just now about, you know, that catharsis, that as Black people being in a constant state of rage, that translates straight into that definition there, I think. You know, art is a wider piece. Art is created to catalyse hearts, so I view that as awareness, and minds to enact change, so of course widening one's knowledge and visibility. And I think that also ties into the action part of this title. A couple of, you know, anonymous activist artists, I can't define them, would include Banksy and the Guerrilla Girls. And I really want to talk about an example of activist art, and that is Banksy's piece, Love is in the Air. So for this piece, I'm going to try and describe it. It shows a man throwing, it's a graffiti piece depicting a man lunging to throw a bouquet of flowers, which is meant to replace a Molotov cocktail. The piece in itself first appeared on the West Bank wall in Gaza in 2003. And love it, yeah, so yeah. Okay. the peace lovers in the air first appeared in Gaza on the West Bank wall in 2003. Now, Lovers in the Air is a commentary piece on the building of the West Bank wall, which was built in 2002, that the Israeli government built to separate the Palestinian minority from the Jewish Israeli population. And at the time, whilst there were supporters of the construction, and people saw the construction of the wall as a safety measure and justified it, conversely, Banksy and many other people thought that the West Bank wall was a separating and segregating barrier reminiscent of apartheid. So, with that being said, the image of flowers, my brain is like, what am I saying? With the image of the flowers that is in that the man is lunging to throw, it's often seen as a symbol for peace, a call for peace rather than violence. And I can't really go to the next question without really acknowledging what is actually going on at this time and place. At the time that we're recording this episode, we are currently witnessing and seeing live and direct the genocide of the Palestinian people, of many innocent children and lives, and the institutions, actually plural, who use representation politics as part of their brand, are failing to hold the Israeli government accountable. With that being said, actually touching on the piece about anonymity and safety and all of that. As well, we are also seeing the active silencing, doxing and harassment of those who support the Palestinian people. The Palestinian people who have been unlawfully removed from their homes, unjustly removed from their homes, aid removed, people who are still waiting with their house keys to go back to their land, places of worship and hospitals bombed. At the time of recording today, there are over 3,000 civilians dead, with over 1,000 children making that total. And again, these people are killed in the name of quote unquote never again, which absolutely boils my blood to think about it as I'm watching it on social media, as I'm watching the discourse that surrounds that. It's wild to me. And again, that smear campaign piece to brand those who criticize the international law-breaking, brutalist and barbaric actions of the Israeli government as anti-Semitic is untrue. But as Black women who understand the lived experience, the legacy, the harm, and the trauma, and the genocidal nature of colonialism, especially, 20 years after Banksy's painting, decades after 1948, I only have two words, and those two words are Free Palestine. Amen. But anyways, for those of us who share the same sentiment, I would please advise you, please write to your MP. If you do demonstrate, please know your rights. Please keep yourself safe. And also for donations to provide aid to the Palestinian people and also to Gaza, please go to MAP, which stands for Medical Aid for Palestine. They are a UK-based charity / non-profit working to support Palestinian refugees and Palestinians living under Israeli occupation. And finally, on the activism piece, in another article I read called An Investigation of the Intersection Between Art and Activism by Emily Wilcox, touching a little bit on some of your bits on what you talked about activism being. Wilcox states that activism can often be approached with attitudes as it is, to be seen as, problematic and ineffective. And as we've discussed empathy as well, Wilcox actually states, in quotation, quote marks, to effect real change, activists need to work through cultural means, which again, I think it speaks for itself. So yeah, wow. Anyways, I got that off my chest. I had to say that, but yeah. Anyways, so the consumption of art in any form. If you could see how we're recording this episode, you'd think I'm about to swallow this microphone. I nearly dived my whole cheek into this thing. Anyways, the consumption of art in any form opens itself to criticism, pushback, or alignment with the set intention of the artist. This, of course, takes into account the subjective nature of lived experience of the consumer and their interpretation of said art piece. Kazvare, does the scope of whom may see your work and how they engage with your work play a significant part, a role in when you create?
I think when I create work, primarily it starts with what I want to say first and foremost.
Yeah.
And then also in a world that often centers whiteness, I try to center the black voice.
Yes.
And the black gaze primarily.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting sometimes when I read the comments.
Yeah.
I have to remember that people often comment based on where they are.
Yes, 100%. 100%.
And some people are just a little bit obtuse. I say that this isn't often, and this isn't everybody, because I often see actually quite lovely feedback.
Yeah.
But you do sometimes notice the one or two comments. You're like, oh, actually, you're speaking from your own place of jibber jabber.
She don't want to be saved. Don't save her.
Yeah. Literally. So I think as the artist, I sometimes have to separate myself from like, oh, they're not always making a comment on, well, they are making a comment on your art, but actually it's coming from the way that they see the world.
Yes.
And you just have to let them do that.
Yeah.
And sometimes just don't interfere in that. That's actually none of your business.
Yeah.
You've done your job to create the thing.
Yeah.
And in many ways, which is the scary bit of being an artist, like once it's out in the world, it takes on its own life.
It really does.
And you kind of just have to let it do that.
Yeah.
And you can't control what people think and how they respond to your work. You just have to do your part.
100%.
And just let it do that.
100%. I completely agree. And following on from that, I literally wrote in my script today, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So, you know, in the context of my own activism with my writing and my podcast work, as far as I'm concerned personally, if 99 people hated it and one person resonated with it, fantastic. You know, I'm happy. If it was the other way around, I'm also happy. You know, personally, you know, and as you've shared, I believe so deeply in the impact and the power of my own work that I know it speaks for itself in a way where in a competitive world where everyone is providing so much content and creating so much content that it still provides its own unique spin and commentary on certain elements and bits and pieces, and where we're seeing a world that's looking for the next best hit or the next best trend, that's an achievement. There's an art critic called Danto, who also describes activist art as certainly not beautiful. It is angry, ugly, and aggressive. It blames an indifferent society for the illness it seeks to represent. This too is activist, for it means to provoke the society into doing something, but then the artist must not be shocked if the audience is angered by it, rather than by what it points to, which again speaks to what we've both literally just shared. And if, you know, like I said in my disclaimer today, when it comes to the piece of work, I like to provoke thought. Personally, I like to provoke thought, conversation, and racist. If you don't like my work, I will tell you to absolutely suck my beep. But
sorry, that was funny. I think the other thing is, it's really important to pay attention to who is hating your work and who is loving your work.
Yes.
Because even sometimes, whether it's on whatever social media platform I'm looking at,
yes,
if I see that it's mainly, I don't know, like white, far right people that are saying, yes, I really like the point that you're making. If that were to ever happen, I will know that I've lost my way.
Yeah.
I will have I will be like out to sea.
Distraught. Yeah.
I'll be very upset. Then I'd have to question everything.
Yeah.
So I do think it's important, you know, if I rile up somebody who, you know, is, you know, again, white, far right, I feel like I've done my job.
100%.
I feel like, yes, that makes me feel good, actually.
Yeah. I can sleep well at night
that's
on
like
my
a really
conscience.
good night's sleep.
Yeah, literally.
So yeah, I think it's definitely important to, who is loving your work, who is hating it, why are they loving it, why are they hating it? I think
100%.
those are good questions to ask.
100%. And even following on from that, you know, I think in looking at activism, looking at art, we're talking about language, and language is so diverse, language is so powerful. And the message behind each piece, whether that be for me written, you illustrative, this also dictates the wider impact and reception of a piece. So we've talked about this already, like, you know, meaning a piece, meaning a piece that's created hours after something that has happened, and whether that be a trending news or topic or whatever, is likely to get eyes on it because it's on a topic that everybody wants to get their 2 cents on, wants to get their perspective on. However, as we've literally just said just now, having a large set of eyes on a piece of work or having a plethora of comments doesn't necessarily mean that everybody is on the same side, or everyone agrees with your work or has positive intentions towards our work. And again, I've touched a little bit on algorithms and competing, but we're looking at censorship as well in terms of the realm of activism and activism art as well, having to, thinking about some social media platforms where if you put a particular flag or put a particular name or something, you're shadow banned for 2-3 weeks. I can speak from experience, on my platform, I'll post miscellaneous stuff, I'll post the most random and weird memes, plethora of people watching it, but the minute I put the word Met Police, race, racism, anything around that, I'll have 1% of my following that has actually even seen or engaged with my work, which I think is very, very ironic. But I would actually argue, with that being said in terms of the context of sponsorship, that potentially, in the case of Black Square Instagram and performative activism, that might actually serve censorship, because with that, it promotes a lack of critical thinking in social discourse. And I think that really, I guess, when we're talking about lack of critical thinking in social discourse, that also, of course, touching onto your piece on where people are coming from in their interaction with your work, it's a whole kind of cycle, isn't it? But that's an observation that I found was really, really interesting. With that being said, your Bad Apples piece, in my opinion, was one of the most astute and impactful commentary pieces that I've seen. It currently sits on your page as one of the most popular pieces. What was your thought process behind putting it all together, and did you expect it to garner such a response on social media?
I never expected it. It's literally...
I never expected it.
At all.
Yeah.
No. I think what's bizarre, is bizarre the word, but there was no special thought, as in, obviously I thought about it, but I thought about it in the same way that I think about all of my work.
Yeah.
So there was nothing extra special that I did on top. So it's always interesting to me to kind of, when I create work, to kind of see how it's received, because I have some of my personal favorites that, get a very lukewarm reception, which is fine, because I think we all resonate with things differently, isn't it?
Yes.
So I was shocked. I wasn't expecting people to resonate with it in the way that they did. And it's lovely. Yeah. No, it's incredible, Kazvare. And before I actually continue, side note, if I haven't said it already, today's my first day trying rooibos tea, and I'm very anxious and I get nervous around trying new foods and things. And why is that, by the way?
Why is that? I don't know. I'm really trying to think right now. Why is that? I think I'm just scared that I won't like it. I have a comfort food and I just stick with it, and I just get I'm not going to like it. It was literally 2 years ago that one of my friends was like, Chantal, eat an avocado. And I did, and I liked it.
That's so funny.
So I think it's just a lot of fear, really, if I'm honest with you. I have a very specific comfort food. So I now love Ritz crackers, whereas before, for 10 years, I was a breadstick girl through and through. But I only liked one particular shop of breadstick. In fact, to the point where someone could give me a box of breadsticks and they would hide the label. I'd eat it and I'd be like, that's not the breadsticks that I eat. I could even tell you the price point changes, the peaks, the troughs.
You need to buy shares in whoever created those breadsticks.
But unfortunately they changed the recipe, so I don't like it anymore. But I get, it's kind of like my TV shows and TV series is even with that objectively, it takes me a lot to actually try something new. So I'm trying to break that habit, but I like it.
Do you watch the same TV shows over?
A lot. For reference, I think I've watched The Office 5 times.
Wow.
I've watched The Boys. I started The Boys, the whole series, 1 to 3 this year. I've already rewatched it. But I like what I like. But I'm trying to do better with expanding myself.
I hear that, but if you like what you like, that's fine. Yeah. That's fine also.
But I will say though, thank you for pushing me to try this red bush tea, because I really do like it. I didn't know what to expect.
One thing I also like doing, so we're having it, dear listener, We're having it with it's just the tea bag in there and hot water.
Yes.
I also drink it with a dash of milk.
Okay.
So you just treat it like it's like an English breakfast.
Okay.
So, maybe if you're willing to try again, try it this way and then also do it with a bit of milk and see how you feel about that.
I mean, I've got loads of tea bags, so I can give you like half of my box and I'll take the half home and enjoy that. So
I'll definitely.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, I'll feed back with the milk. But back on topic, with the bad apples piece, currently on your page, it stands at 19,445 likes over
my gosh,
and 397 comments. Now a lot of those comments were very much like, yes, oh my god, like this is it. I have even spoken to you privately, and I shared it on both my podcast platform and my personal platform, and in both inboxes, all I saw was, that's it. Like, I've never seen something explained so like straightforward. And I was like, this is it. This is absolutely it. And considering that this was published literally a month ago, since you put that piece up. And, for me, another angle to consider, is the role of culture and its relationship with art in the art of activism. And I think, with this particular piece, the Bad Apples piece, I think it really breaks down the need for intellectualism. It really breaks down the whole kind of, essay piece around the bad apples discourse, the need to know every single academic theory and literature and especially when we're talking about a discourse surrounding the already documented, and I quote, institutionally racist, misogynist and homophobic Met Police. Also with the Bad Apples piece, as I was analysing it, I thought to myself, like, whether you're a vegan, whether you're a vegetarian, whether you're a pescatarian, whether you're a meat eater, whether you eat the air, I don't care. No, but you cannot sit there and tell me you're going to eat a pie that has bad apples in it. Like it was so, I just thought it was so on the nose that you just couldn't refute it. You can't Snow White me. When we're talking about apples, you cannot Snow White me. I'm not going to be eating this apple. You can't do that. And when talking about art, looking at question 5 and this discussion we had there, around the role of activism, in talking about globalization, talking about, the diversity of language. Globalization means that, some activism can be culture-based. And we're talking about the culture of the police here. That's the commentary that's been provided in the case of the Bad Apples piece. And of course, with the role of culture and globalization, that can also play a part in the understanding of, universal language and symbols. For example, the Black Power fist is a significantly powerful symbol in protest. And of course, the Bad Apples piece challenges the Bad Apples theory that goes on and on and on. And furthermore, I ask, why should we as a people be forced to listen to propaganda? Why should we be forced to accept that, it's just a few bad apples, it's just a few bad police officers, but we're talking about the same police officers with their guns that were protesting, but yet have no problem ramming themselves into a 13-year-old black boy playing with water guns. Do you know what I mean? And furthermore, I also thought, as I was looking at the Bad Apples piece, that you could really repurpose it to look at different types of debate. For example, the quote-unquote debate against femicide and violence against women. You hear a lot, not all men. That same concept can apply. Again, you're not going to eat or involve yourself with anything that looks, smells, and is off. And again, touching on this piece, in the previous episode, if you haven't, please have a look. Episode 4, Black Youth, Innocence, Instinct and Independence with Kadra Abdi-Nazir from Centre for Mental Health. I talk about the politics of representation in media, and the politics of representation, I'm talking a little bit too fast. The Politics of Representation by scholar Stuart Hall. He defines it as the production of meaning through language, through systems of images, objects, events, and language. And of course, this is how the media chooses to maintain the socially narrative discourse, i.e. the bad apples, it's not all of us piece, but it's how the media chooses that to maintain the socially dominant narrative of a us versus them to further divide and conquer disenfranchised people. So again, I've told you already in private so many times, but again, incredible piece. I loved it. And, another example that I found was really, really incredible was the White Ally piece, especially after the Battle of Montgomery, the piece where you had the chair and it was the TED Talk, and it was like, this is what it means to be a white ally. Again, I absolutely creased myself, like, that's it. Like, I mean, funny enough, I didn't get any comments from that when I shared it on my platforms, but maybe it was a few of the white folks kind of feeling a little bit like, oh, maybe it's that simple to be an ally, but what do we know?
Well, exactly. Lol.
Literally. So your book, Stay Woke Kids, was published in 2021, just after 2020, which was fuck me. Start that again. Your book, Stay Woke Kids, was published in 2021, after 2020, which was a socially and politically charged year. In a society where we're seeing woke used as a pejorative term and the rise of censorship against critiquing white supremacy, how does your book reflect the current state of affairs?
I think, sadly, it's still very relevant.
Yeah.
And the same issues are here, just in different forms.
Yes.
And it's interesting, actually, at the beginning of the year, I thought to myself, I wonder if I could actually go a whole year without posting.
What?
And just literally just repost things that I've done before.
Really?
And I think there's a degree to which I could have done that, because a lot of the same issues and same things
coming up.
They come up, and that's obviously that's sad. Like, you know, I would hope that as a society, we would move on. But we're still grappling with a lot of the same things, isn't it?
Well, yeah, it's so true. So true.
So basically everything that I've written in my book still stands.
It's beautiful. I'm looking at it like in the flesh. It is so cute. And
thanks.
like the eyes in the, I didn't notice that. Obviously you won't notice that online, will you, until you see it in the flesh, but there are eyes in the gaps in the A and the O, which I think is really like awake. Like anyways, that's me just digesting it, like thinking out loud as we're recording, but that's pretty cool. I love it. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
It's beautiful. But and
I think people who use woke in the way that they do, it's just embarrassing. I find it so embarrassing. Like, I look at them, I get secondhand embarrassment. I'm like, you know, and especially when you ask them, what do you mean by that? That's when they start scrambling. That's when they start sweating. Because they know what they're doing.
They do. And as you were talking, I was even thinking, like, again, you have to colonize language. Like, you couldn't think of your own term to pull up when we're talking about if you're talking about challenging what we're saying. And actually, a quote that you shared in an article for Black Blossoms, your quote was, "Stay woke because despite white majority culture thinking it's a slur, we don't have to see it in the same way," which I very much agree. And if you don't mind, there's a page in your book called Bow Down, and it talks around immigration discourse, and the limerick poem, limerick fab. The limerick goes, "Immigrants are taking our jobs. No, wait, all immigrants are slobs. But when we move countries, we don't give a monkeys. We're expats, we're awesome, we're gods." Now, if that doesn't tell you about the culture of the UK, I don't know what will. And funnily enough, actually, on my way into the studio, I saw on the tube there's an advert for a particular institution where they said, AI won't take all of your jobs, which I thought to myself, that's a really interesting campaign to run. Why is it that software is given more compassion and more of a devil's advocate position than humans? Why isn't the same grace extended to them? Why is that debate not understandable or not computable when it comes to refugees that are coming into the country to build a better life for themselves, to flee from dangerous situations? But again, when we're looking at the government and their policies on immigration, I think it speaks for itself, really. In terms of looking at Stay Woke Kids and the impact of that book, again touching on episode 4 with Kazvare, Innocence, Instinct and Independence. There's a piece on challenging the school curriculum and the need for education. Your book out here, as you've said, is a piece that's really out there to support people in digesting huge concepts, huge concepts around race, gender, politics, and again we're seeing our government saying that it's unnecessary to have gender education, it's unnecessary to have education where the British government and their role in this transatlantic slave trade and the impact of that is to be acknowledged at schools. It's pretty interesting. But with that being said, very recently, actually, literally this week, in an article by The Guardian, the children's book publisher Scholastic has said in the US that they will separate its titles in elementary school book fairs by race, gender and sexuality, allowing school districts to either include or exclude the list, which I think is absolutely wild. Absolutely wild. And the decision was made in a response to dozens of state laws restricting how the topics are discussed in schools, which again, if we're looking at educating people on being aware of the world that we're living in and how it impacts them as young children individually, but also the world that they are witnessing at large and the society that we're seeing as a whole, that is, it's detrimental to have these laws that are put in place. Now, with this publisher, they actually released a statement which I'll actually read out loud, which says there are now enacted or pending legislation in more than 30 US states prohibiting certain kinds of books from being in schools, mostly LGBTQIA+ titles and books that engage with the presence of racism in our country. Because Scholastic book fairs are invited into schools where books can be purchased by kids on their own, these laws create an almost impossible dilemma. Back away from these titles or risk making teachers, librarians or volunteers vulnerable to being fired, sued or prosecuted. We cannot make the decision for our school partners around risks on what they're willing to take based on the state laws and local laws that apply to their district. So these topics and collection, so they made a list, as mentioned. Where am I? I've lost my trail of thought. You know when you're reading something and then you lose where you were? That's so annoying. I'm going to go back to here. We cannot make a decision for our school partners around what risks they're willing to take based on the state and local laws that apply to their district. So these topics and this collection have been a part of many planning calls that happen in advance of a shipping fair. We don't pretend that the solution is perfect, but the other option would be to not offer these books at all, which is not something that we'd consider, end quote. And I just kind of want to touch back on, again, your book and how does that feel for you? How does that feel for you in terms of writing the book, creating the book, developing it in the context of all of this?
What do you mean?
In the context of understanding that we are in a world that is seeking to silence this type of literature, that's seeking to not give this to children, that doesn't want children to learn about race, that doesn't want children to learn about gender, that doesn't want children to learn about, toxic masculinity as such. Does that make sense? I feel like I'm being a little bit unclear.
Yeah, I think, it speaks to the societies in which we live, isn't it? And I think I once made an illustration of Henry VIII. And I think it said something like, how many times are you lot going to learn about me and my baby mums? Or something like that. And I think, often, especially in England, if we kind of contextualize it to here,
yes,
what we tend to learn about in the school system is very limited, and it's often the glory days, isn't it?
It's
so
diluted.
World War II, we were victorious then.
Yes.
Henry VIII and...
I could say the whole syllabus. It's literally Henry VIII, World War II, Cold War, a little bit of Queen Victoria, and that's about it. That's it. And
I think that's done from obviously they know what they're doing, but it's also really, anyway, the way that I see it is, it's from a place of insecurity, isn't it?
100%.
And I think often, especially if you're telling a story to somebody about something, if you only tell the good bits of what your behavior was and not actually, but I also did this. You're not painting an accurate picture.
You're really not. And you're not at all. And I think for me, with my work and my activism, a lot of my education was outside of the institution of education. So for example, in my history A level, we learnt about Israel and Palestine, and it was so diluted. It was very much like, the Balfour Declaration was sent and that was it. And now we have two countries. And it was like, okay, interesting. When it came to the civil rights era, Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, that was it. There was no actual mention of the British role of, the transatlantic slave trade, which led right into the civil rights era movement. There was nothing. In fact, they even dashed a little bit of, here you go, watch a bit of Roots. That can be your education for there today. Like, it's like you said, it paints a really inaccurate picture. It's also doing a disservice to people. God forbid, in the UK they were saying let's ban these titles, and they put your book on a list and say let's ban slave work kids. That would again hold a significant detriment to people being able to access knowledge. And again, everyone has different ways of digesting concepts. For example, looking at your book, for example, looking at an essay that's been written, for example. And I think, this kind of, I guess the question or the, I guess I call it a worry for me anyways, the worry of censorship around white supremacy only provides an imperative for us as people that like to be activists, that like to act, the imperative nature to educate people, to educate yourselves. And I feel like, as I've said already, your book has a really great way of diversifying the way that an artist or an activist goes to get their points across. So, next question. Unfortunately, there are disparities in visibility for Black businesses, creatives, and plagiarism, which is common for Black creatives. Have there been challenges or hindrances to your art and your creative processes? And if so, how did you navigate them?
Yes, there have been challenges.
Wow. Spill the tea.
I think the challenge really is to keep going, if I'm honest with you. And I think, a lot of Black businesses are less likely to receive funding.
Yes.
Just across the board, and especially Black female-led businesses are even less likely to get.
It's true.
I think it's like 1% or 0.1% of, like, it's a ridiculous number, like Black businesses. But then when you think, let's interrogate that number and how many women are at the helm, it's even more shocking.
Wow.
Don't quote me. I think it is.
It's still tragic.
It's under 5%.
Yeah, under 5% of funding. Like, wow.
Yeah, like capital seed funding, whatever those words are.
I don't know. I'm not a finance bro. Finance bros, put it in the comments below.
Exactly. Tell us.
Literally.
And some of my favorite Black businesses have actually shut down in the past 18 months.
What?
Just because of, I don't know. I think there are a lot of reasons as to why people will kind of fold their businesses. But when I've seen, when I've seen the announcements that they've put out, I'm like, I get it. I get it. And it's really difficult. And like, honestly, even this past year myself, I've been like, just pack it in, shut up shop, because no, honestly, like it's not easy. It's really not easy.
Would you really pack up shop? Please don't go.
Of course, like of course. I would, but not for now.
Okay, good. I was gonna say, please, this better not be a farewell.
That's just how I feel today. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There are definitely days where I'm like, no, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
how do you navigate then? How have you navigated these challenges to your work? I mean, you said keep going, but like,
keep going. Else? I think having a good support system. So definitely like family.
Yeah.
Is a good support system, and friends.
Yeah.
I also have a lovely group chat with some other Black female boss babes. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Shout out to you lot.
Aww.
And even this past week, I was in there ranting like, rah, da, 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 da. Can you believe this? Da, 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 da. And I think it's important to have those spaces
100%.
because some things are not meant for online.
No, they're not. No.
Consumption.
Yeah,
so leave it in your group chat, and I'm really grateful to have that space.
Yeah.
Of people who get it.
Yeah.
And who are navigating the same, if not similar, spaces as you.
Yeah.
I think that really helps. And it's just, it's literally one foot in front of the other. It's not easy. Wow. It's actually not easy.
It really isn't. Even in the time that I've been doing it, it's just been like, it gets to a point where there's just, even for me, like because I do a lot of writing when I can, sometimes I'll look at the news and I'll be like, there's there's 5 different topics. I'll have 5 different concepts of 5 different pieces, but it's like by the next week it's like, oh wait, there's more. Oh wait, there's just, okay, like how am I meant to navigate this and try and communicate my feelings, but also what I think society should do as a whole. Also, like you said, it's the same issues are coming up again and again and again. Why do we have to have these conversations again and again and again to understand what's actually going on? In the case of Israel and Palestine, why are we still going on and 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 on when what really needs to be acknowledged is that the Palestinians are living under an apartheid state. Like, there needs to be change now. There needs to be a ceasefire now. There needs to be, people being seen in the International Criminal Court of Law now. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's jarring. And I think, adding on to the bits that you shared as well, with hindrances to work, for me personally, like, I've already seen hindrances to my work, but I try a lot of the time. It's hard. I think everyone would be lying if they said that, some type of negative feedback doesn't kind of sting a little bit, but it's life. We kind of get up and we move on. But with that being said, for me, it's by the by, it is what it is. But as I've grown and grown and grown in my work, I've seen a lot of, not a lot, that's not a lot, God forbid, I reject that on myself, but I've seen little, flirtations of hindrances. Like, there's an example I can give you listeners today. I was working, let me try and phrase this in a way that is diplomatic. An example, a year ago, I was asked to write a piece of work for a particular media house. This piece of work would include my cultural heritage and little bits and pieces there, and it was meant to go to an external media house and this, that, and the third. I'd co-written the piece actually with someone, sent it to the people that had requested me to write the piece. Fantastic. All I needed to wait for was the link to share with people. Anyways, the link gets shared. I click on the piece and I find out that my name had been taken out and everything else that had specifically identified me was removed. Now, I went back to the people that had asked me to write this piece of work and I was like, I think this is so disrespectful. I had to be professional, so I was like, this is so disrespectful. You of all people know that I take my work seriously. How could you? And the people at the time were like, oh, we're so sorry, with media, it's just how it is. It's just the way that it works. And we'll have a chat. We'll see what we can do. They even had the audacity to even say to me, oh, this person's really upset. They're going to try and fix it. That's
outrageous. What was it? I'm still not getting their rationale.
You tell me. I don't know. So anyways, I told them you have 2 options. Either you tell them to take the piece down, or you tell them to put everything back where I left it because it's very disrespectful. Oh, but the media house wanted to go with the bigger name. I was like, I don't care. Anyways, by the end of the day, they fixed it. They got everything put up. And also, actually, side note, I said to them, if I didn't click on the link, y'all wouldn't have told me that happened. So, like, you're also complicit. As much as you want to say, oh, we don't know, you're complicit. Anyways, wow. Please. So where do we need to go? Who are we jumping after this? I can't say. But yeah, I can't say at the moment. But it was for me.
But that's a very mad thing. I've done an illustration on this before, where often you feel like you have to protect. People do the most wild things. Like a lot of these institutions, a lot of these companies,
mad.
They do the maddest of things, and then you can't even call them out. Really, the way that they deserve, the way they deserve to be dragged, they don't.
It's wild. But thankfully, my co-author backed me all the way, another incredible Black woman who I hope to have on this podcast very soon. But she all the way was like, you need to get this on, it's unacceptable. Good. They rectified it, they apologized. They were like, oh, the journalist would like to speak to you. I don't want to speak to them. It's done, it's dusted. I've even had people say to me, in terms of challenges to my work, I don't want people to think of you when they think of race equity. Girl, if I open my mouth and say names and places, people will be down my fucking throat. Okay? But I take, do you know what I mean? I take all of that as, well, you see the impact of my work, and whatever hindrance you thought you were proving to me has proven insignificant because I'm still doing my race equity work, bitch. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm still fucking here. And it really fucking jars me. And do you know what's really funny? Many months after, I was blessed enough to have a life-changing opportunity to work with Grazia, where I wrote my piece on unconscious bias with Prince Harry. And again, that was my first ever piece with a big media house. And did I have to do have a sit down with them, telling them to put my name back on the piece? No, I didn't. So for me, again, that was a huge character building moment. It still is a character building moment as a young professional that is still navigating her way through the world and still trying to, because I don't know about you, but I find a lot of the time when it comes to successful black women, when it comes to black women who are so outspoken, who are so, unapologetic in their own art form, there is such a weird need to humble them or belittle their accomplishments. And I think time and time again, like, if you are insecure in yourself, just say that and just deal with that by yourself. Why are you projecting that onto me? Because if it was someone else who may not have the same, like you said, a support system, like, your group chat or your friends or, a good enough self-image, that could really break down somebody. That could break down someone's defense system. I had an ex-friend say to me one time, oh, you use big words for no reason. Again, these big motherfucking words have got me on my motherfucking podcast and have got me in motherfucking Grazia magazine. So how about that? Do you know what I mean? Like, it is so like, I could talk about challenges all the time, but yeah, like Beyonce says, I'm one of one. I'm the only one. Don't even waste your time trying to compete with me. No one else in this world can think like me. So I think when it comes to, anyone that's listening, that is a black business owner, that's also creative, that's also, putting their work out there and trying to navigate your own challenges. And please put in the comment section, please, tag us in your responses. Have you had any challenges to your work? If so, how have you overcome them? Have you had any similar experiences to Kazvare and I, and have you got that sisterhood? Have you got that safe space where you have family, where you have friends that can lift you up? But my goodness gracious, like I say, I know you've been in the game for a long time, but yeah, in my beginning stages, it's been a lot of having to navigate BS and having to really, again, I can't say right now, but it's having to just think, okay, that's a note to take in, because I know that when I grow, I'll have to probably deal with other types with ish as well. So anyways, sure. I could keep going forever, but I've got it off my chest, so I'm happy with that.
Yeah, that's outrageous. I can't believe that.
Outrageous. But again, when I can say what I can say, what I want to say, I will say it. But why? When I tell you, like, when that person said, I don't want people to think of race equity when they think of you, I remember thinking, you are fucking mad. You are absolutely fucking mad. But I don't even want to say too much yet, but let's keep that step in. So, as an artist, do you feel the current art landscape does justice to authentically critique, question, and act to change our realities of systemic oppression? And for that, I put race, gender, and class through the lens of politics, power, and race.
I think there are always artists speaking if we look close enough.
Yes.
There's an exhibition on at the moment. I don't know whether you've had a chance to go there, but it's at the Barbican.
Ooh.
The Curve is called Chorus in Memory of Flight.
I haven't, no.
And it's by an artist called Julia Knox. And it basically tracks or talks about the black diaspora in Europe, and just often we think, basically racism is everywhere, isn't it?
Everywhere.
And you just basically get a different version of it. And it kind of deals with that. Yeah. And you meet, just black people from all over Europe, and it's just a beautiful exploration of that. So if you get a chance, definitely go and see that. It's free. I think artists are speaking all the time. I think often they just don't have the mic.
Yes.
That's all that it is.
Yes.
And I think sometimes we have to either go looking or
100%.
maybe just open our eyes sometimes, really. That's no shade. Like, sometimes we do have to just have to be a bit more circumspect and aware of what's going on. But there are definitely always art is speaking, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And following on from what you've just shared, an artist called Ai Weiwei has famously, they are a Chinese artist who has famously worked with various mediums, materials and styles, and his work is well known for critiquing the Chinese government, which has pushed him on the international stage. And he says, similar to having a mic and just opening our eyes and speaking, really, he says, and I quote, "An artist must be an activist, aesthetically, morally, or philosophically. This does not mean that they have to demonstrate in street protests, but rather deal with these issues through a so-called artistic language. Without that kind of consciousness, to be blind to human struggle, one cannot even be called an artist."
Ooh.
Powerful quote, powerful quote from this artist. And in terms of art that speaks on the landscape, that speaks to critique, society as a whole. There's a you would have seen it. It was in the peak of 2020. It's a series called Stolen by the artist Adrian Brandon. And the series Stolen is dedicated to Black people whose lives were robbed at the hands of the police. And the series touched on grief and the unknown. So with this artist, what they did is that they would draw the individual, but they would color them in. They would color them in using a minute for a year of their life. So, for example, they did.
That's heartbreaking.
Really beautiful series, though. And just put into context again, like the brutality of violence that us as Black people face. They did one of Tamir Rice, and again, only colouring in for 12 minutes. Do you know what I mean? And it's just that seeing of that, it's unfinished. They weren't able to live their life to the fullest extent. George Floyd, Adrian Brandon did a piece. He was coloured in for 46 minutes. Breonna Taylor was coloured in for 26 minutes. Wow. And again, really poignant. But again, as I was writing this script, I was like, oh my gosh, that's one that comes to mind as one that really critiques the social landscape. I haven't seen more of their recent work. I hope they're still out there. If there is, I would like to have a look at it. But I feel controversially, actually, that I don't think there is enough activist art out there. I don't think there's enough of a variety out there. But rather, I think what we're seeing is a huge population of Instagram infographics, where, and I think, it's great in terms of having that information, but I think we're seeing a huge surge of infographics. And I think, I don't know, I just think to some extent it can encourage people to be a little bit lazy. I think it encourages people to not use their own voice and dig deep inside themselves and think, obviously it's great to educate yourself. Please do that before you speak on a topic. But I just think it's imperative for us as human beings to really act. I don't think it's okay for us to sit down and be like, oh, it's okay. Kazvare will put a post up, I'll just share it. Or Chantal will put a piece up, I'll just share it. It'll be absolutely fine. But yeah, I just think it just ties into lack of critical thinking. It's the bit of oh, I've done my part, I've done the sharing, I've shared 10 pieces. No, use your voice and do your thing.
Hello viewers, wherever you are. Thank you for tuning in to another episode. We're taking a little break now, but stay tuned. We're going to play Wavelength again, everyone's favourite game. So stay tuned, and I love you. Bye.
Kazvare, what does action as a consumer of art and a creator of art look like tomorrow and beyond? Is social political equity obsolete?
One thing that I have loved actually is hearing that teachers have used my artist teaching tools.
What?
For their classes.
Amazing.
That really, I've been really moved by that actually.
Yeah.
And I think education to me is always an active movement.
Yes.
So yeah, even going back to, what you were saying earlier about, certain books being taken out of action or just not allowed in schools. It's, for me, in a very small way, it's amazing that there are some teachers that are still taking back that power and taking back the work back into schools and doing
that's beautiful,
doing lovely stuff with it. So that excites me. And I think for me, especially as a creator of art, I'd love to be comfortable enough to be able to fund other artists to create work. and create art. And for that, often you need time and space and not have to worry about your bills.
Oh my God.
So I would love to be in a position to be able to do that. And I think that's, that's one way of being active, isn't it?
Yeah, of course.
And yeah, I think it's amazing to be able to, I guess, use your voice to speak on things, but also empower other people to do the same.
Yes.
So I feel like that, I think that's, for me anyway, that's where the action would come in.
Fantastic. Thank you, Kazvare. I think adding on to what you... Actually, drinking game, as you're listening through this episode, please take a shot or a swig of whatever you have whenever you hear me say, adding on to that. But yeah, adding on to that. For me, action as a consumer of art and as a creator of my own art, activism, whatever you want to call it, I think, like I said before, the art of activism, when I created this, is an ode to the various ways in which people, including yourself, Kazvare, can truly challenge social injustice. And I said this earlier in the episode, but for me, activism is such a broad spectrum. Again, whether it's poetry, whether it's, I don't know, you banging some pots in a weird arrangement of a flag or something that provides some type of commentary. The opportunities and the vessels are so endless. And you know what? As long as oppressive regimes continues, so will the call for people to rise up and act against it continues. And, in response to whether social political equity is obsolete, I don't know. That's part of why I've developed this podcast, because, the podcast is here to discover whether we really will see a social political equitable state or world, as you will, and if we will really see true liberation. But I guess, that's that for...
Do you think that we will see liberation?
People have asked me this and I'm like, I just don't know. I think actually I was asked this on my friend's podcast, Francesco's podcast, Chum Chat UK, a couple of years ago. Do I think we'll see liberation? Lord, right now in this current climate, I don't think we will see true liberation where everybody is treated the same. I just think society is too ingrained at the moment. I think society is too focused on living in the same cycles of behavior. So let's talk in the context of race with white privilege and the ways that it's manifested. People are so comfortable living in that. If that means they are able to have more visibility and not have to deal with police brutality, and if that means their black peer has police brutality and doesn't affect them or their family, that's fine for them. Which we've seen time and time again. We see apathy in the context of healthcare, in the context of class. And I just don't think people are willing to have that empathy until it affects them directly. And again, like I've said before, empathy isn't a skill that you can really teach. It has to be kind of within you or not within you. And even this current witnessing of the genocide of the Palestinian people, personally, for me, I don't think I've been so shocked to see such a divide in discourse. I don't think I've been so shocked to see the amount of people who were doing up black squares coming in and saying, oh my gosh, the Palestinian people are this and that and are defending the Israeli government, which for me is like, I feel like we took 5 steps forward in 2020 and then 10 steps back. So do I think we'll see liberation? As of right now, I don't think so. I don't want it to be, because personally for me in my work, I see myself, I'm unrelenting. I know that I'll keep going no matter what, but I don't know. I really don't know. Yeah, it sucks, but I just don't know.
Yeah.
So yeah. But yeah, finally though, on a lighter note, actually, for the wow, Chantal pronunciation, for the aspiring artists and activists around the world, Kazvare, please share a word of encouragement.
I think that one of the most important things for artists across the board is to have courage.
Yes.
And I think courage, what do they say? It's not the absence of fear, but it's doing it anyway, isn't it?
Yes.
And I think to do your art, whatever that might be, it requires courage. It requires courage in terms of like just getting it out there, full 100%. Stop. And it requires courage, especially if you're talking about something, to kind of just get it out there despite the feedback you might get.
100%.
Yeah, I think we're in a generation, or maybe I think there've been many generations where this has been the need, but we're in a generation where there is need for courage, and there is need to speak out and say the things that need to be said.
Yeah.
And it's like you were saying earlier, you can't just wait for other people to do it.
No.
Like, we've all been given a voice. And so, yeah, I think we have an obligation to use the gifts and the talents that we've been given.
Yes.
We need to steward them well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think that often requires courage. So, for
Aww.
whoever's listening to this, be brave, be bold, and just, walk in the gifts that you've been given. Like, don't waste them.
Yeah.
Don't waste them.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Kazvare. To add on to that, for me, in terms of what I have to share in terms of my encouraging word, the ability to create something, whether that be written, spoken, I've gone over this time and time again, which, for the purpose of this episode, pun intended, to create something which colours outside the lines of systemic oppression, whether that be climate change, racism, gender, class, geopolitics, or a mixture of all of them, is something that should be expressed. Be unafraid. Literally, you mentioned this courage. Be unafraid to stand out against this. To stand out against the socially dominant narrative of white supremacy, to be outstanding. Again, as Kazvare has literally just said, in her own words, your own art. I say your own art of activism lies deep within you, and definitely explore that. Because and explore what empowers that, especially, the more voices we get out there, the more I can sit here and one day say, yes, we will see true liberation one day, because it's now more than ever we need to see a different climate. I don't know how as a society we went into isolation in 2020 and we've come out as a whole in a completely different headspace, where it's like to campaign for social justice is a different type of isolation. Like we deserve better than this as a people, in my view. So anyways, ending on this podcast, Kazvare, which other artists, you've mentioned an exhibition before, but which other artists, exhibitions and showcases would you recommend to widen one's social political knowledge, awareness and activism journey?
Great question, Chantal. I can only speak to what I've seen recently.
Yes.
So as well as Chorus and Memory of Flight. I don't know whether you've been to the Tate Modern recently. They've got.
I'm actually going next week.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
You have to check out. What's it called? A World in Common. So it's an African contemporary photography exhibition. There was lots of good work there as well. So definitely check that out.
Fabulous.
I think there are lots of exciting artists there.
Fab. Thank you so much, Kazvare. Wow, that's incredible. I'm trying to see if I've got any recommendations, really. In terms of recommendations, there is an exhibition going on. I haven't been to it, but it's at the Somerset House. It's the Morgan Stanley exhibition, and it's an exhibition on Black British culture and the Black British culture's contribution to British design history, which I believe is running until the beginning of November. In terms of an exhibition, yes.
Sorry, I forgot to say that is a very good exhibition. I did go and see that. Yes,
fabulous.
Harris Elliott is one of the people that was. Harris Elliott helped to curate it.
Fab.
It's really good.
Nice.
It's really
okay,
worth
cool.
going to see.
I'm excited. Okay, cool. Thank you. Also, it's not on now, but one that's actually stuck out to me was an exhibition I went to on my 25th birthday in January, and it was called Rebel Rebel by Sohelia Sokranvari. The exhibition title, it was actually at the Barbican. It was in the Curve. And the title borrows from David Bowie's 1974 cult pop song and pays tribute to the significant courage of 27 female icons from pre-revolutionary Iran who pursued their careers in a culture enamored with Western style but not its freedoms. So at the exhibition, there were 27 portraits. There were some clips from different types of Iranian film, which featured some of these artists and actresses as well. And there's also a really cute holographic display. I'll try and get some. Actually, no, it's an audio only episode. But yeah, really, really like beautiful. Really touched me as well. It ended in February actually, but yeah, it was. If you were able to see the Rebel Rebel exhibition, please again let us know what you enjoyed the most, and if what stood out to you, what portrait stood out to you. So yeah, in terms of artists, I've discussed Ai Weiwei and his incredible work in terms of challenging the Chinese government. He has also curated a documentary film called Cockroach, which follows the 2019 protests in Hong Kong before China placed it back under its judicial and political control. And he is currently working on a docuseries about the life of Rohingya refugees. Also, there's Kehinde Wiley, an American artist whose work, in his words, and I quote, quotes historical sources and positions young black men within the field of power. He is also the first black queer artist to be commissioned for a professional portrait. So we did the professional portrait for Barack Obama. There's also the Guerrilla Girls as well. The Guerrilla Girls, who I've referenced earlier in this episode, are an anonymous group of activist artists dedicated to fighting institutional sexism, racism, and inequality in the art world since their formation in 1985. They've done a summation of letter campaigns, exhibitions, pieces, and because of their anonymity, no one knows who the Guerrilla Girls are. So you never know how the universe works, but if any of you are listening, hey, I'd love to speak to you. That'd be great to have you on the podcast. We're manifesting that. But they say we could be anyone and we are everywhere. So very ominous. And one of their pieces, which I've actually got here on my script, is a little pop quiz, which goes, if February is Black History Month and March is Women History Month, what happens the rest of the year? I'll go to you. What do you think happens the rest of the year?
It's whiteness the rest of the time, isn't it?
You know what? Not far off. Discrimination was the answer that they put in.
Oh, interesting.
And obviously, I cannot be listing all these artists and not actually say Kazvare.
No.
Can you imagine? All these artists, and say thank you so much. You can go home now. But no, Kazvare, of course. Kazvare Made It. Of course, the special guest in the episode. Again, please have a look on their social media. Again, I'll tag everything ready for you to peruse. Their shop, their store, you can get all their merchandise, their books, They Woke Kids. I will have Kazvare go into more detail and give a better summary than I have. But again, all of their artwork, please engage with it, please share with your networks, and I hope it inspires you to get involved. So to finalize today's episode, you have heard Kazvare's incredible insights and nuggets for prospective business owners and our shared experience as activists to some degree. Albeit different types of activism, this conversation, in my view, challenged the notion in which we, as people, cannot collectively witness and experience social justice in our outward world, but seek to escape it. When creators are people of the world, simply the person is political. However, the lived experience, morals, integrity, knowledge of social and political injustice mean that, in my view, it is to a great extent that art should be considered as an instrumental tool. So, guys and gals and theys, in the case of the overarching question for today, which was, and I'll remind you all, the consumption of art allows spectators to enjoy art, escape reality, and engage with its unique messaging. This can mislead the consumer to view art as a separate entity to the world in which it is created in, rather than a reflection of the world. To which extent should art be recognised as an instrumental tool for society to authentically critique, question, and enact change for our realities through the lens of politics, power, and race? Now, of course, subject to the variables that both Kazvare and I have mentioned, the answer to that question has and is yet to be confirmed. Wow. So, Kazvare, please, in better words than I could, let the folks know where they can find you and how we can keep supporting you and the incredible work that you do.
You can find me on social media, Kazvare Made It, at Kazvare Made It. So that's KAZV for Victor, ARE, yes. Made It. On Instagram, on TikTok. Not that I do much TikToking. I lurk more than post there. Twitter, and I think I've still got a Facebook account. So you can find me there. I've also got a website where you can buy lots of fun greetings cards, stationery, mugs, notebooks. I've got some lovely, new notebooks coming out. Whoop, whoop. So you can find me in those places.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Kazvare. I've actually got a little lovely gift from Kazvare, actually, a very sneak peek into what may be coming out. Beautiful notebook. So please, creatives, support a Black business, importantly, but find yourself one of these amazing notebooks and get your ideas in them. So in terms of the podcast, as you know, you can find the podcast on anywhere you listen to a podcast, whether that be Spotify, Apple, Google, and the like. Please leave a lovely, be honest, say it with your chest, as another podcast Shits and Gigs says, but please leave a review. That'd be helpful. YouTube, please subscribe. You can find the podcast at _to-be-confirmed-pod on TikTok and Instagram. As mentioned already, Kazvare socials will be tagged. All of the websites will be logged in, so you can have a look there. If you are interested in the sources that I used, I do keep a list of them. Let me know and I will provide them for you all as well to have a peruse for yourself. But also, if you have a guest, someone that you would like me to feature on this podcast, please let me know. From time to time, I will ask for insight and input. So I'd like to know what you'd like to see. And of course, Kazvare and I spoke quite a bit today. But if you feel there's anything that Kazvare and I have missed, or there's an element that you want to expand on, again, comment section, that's what it's there for. Please feel free to explore that. But as always, I am so eternally grateful for your support. Again, as I always say, it's only a matter of time this podcast will be internationally renowned. But as always, I will see you all very, very soon on the next episode of To Be Confirmed, at a date and time to be confirmed. So, love you lots, and I'll see you very soon. Hey! Thank you for joining us on another episode of To Be Confirmed. I hope that you feel inspired, and please don't forget to like, share, comment, save, and subscribe to the podcast. We'll be seeing you very, very soon with another episode at a date to be confirmed. Wavelength, we're about to play. Wavelength, 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 we're about to play Wavelength.
Yeah.
Lovely. Fantastic.
Okay, so the rules are simple. We play Wavelength. You ready?
Okay, I've got a number.
Maybe let's go for chocolate bars.
Okay, cool. Okay, cool. I'm thinking of crunchy.
Oh, okay. That's got to be like a 3, surely.
Really? See, I'd say that's high.
No, really? Although you look shocked as when I said 3, you're shocked.
I need to stop.
Okay, so it's obviously higher in your estimation. Yeah. Fine.
Okay. Second one. Give me a day of the week.
Wednesday.
Oh,
that's pretty mid. It's pretty medium, isn't it? It's not the start. It's not. It's maybe a bit lower than. Do you like Wednesdays for some strange reason? Maybe you've got some obsession with Wednesday. Okay, and then your third and final one.
TV shows. TV shows, movies.
It's gonna absolutely get people being like, what? But Finding Nemo.
Finding Nemo is a good film, in my opinion.
Oh. Did you see her face?
So then we got crunchy. She was shocked that you said it was bad.
Okay, so it's not as low as 3, but it's obviously not high because Finding Nemo. Yeah.
And Wednesday.
And Wednesday is mid, so I think that's like a 5.
No, it was 3. I was shocked because you got it.
Oh, it's a 3. Oh,
It was a
really?
3.
Oh,
So
okay.
I hate crunchy bars. I don't like Wednesdays. And
Oh, you were shocked that she under.
Yeah, that's why I was like, I need to
I was
stop.
the only one that was thinking.
So like finding
Interesting.
the reason why I say Finding Nemo before people start jumping me in the comments is because like I watched. But to be fair, I didn't really watch up what? I didn't grow up watching Disney films, so that's probably one aspect of it. 2, I watched it. I did fall asleep in between, but I didn't connect with it that much. So maybe I'll watch it again. You guys can convince me, but yeah, it's a 3 for me. I'm sorry.
Anyway, that was Wavelength.
Wait, let's do another round.
Oh, another round?
Yeah, because
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. We say categories,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
See, I'm cluing on. Okay. Snacks.
Jaffa cakes.
Ooh.
What are you saying? For me, that
Tasty.
is horrendous. I hate.
Do you know what's funny? I was going to actually bring some Jaffa cakes to the studio today.
I wouldn't have touched them. I wouldn't even looked at them.
Wow. That hurts my
What
heart.
do you think? Because it's
I
either you
like
love them or you
them.
hate them. Yeah.
I like them. We'll go with Midge. Let's see the next
Okay.
category.
Next category is going to be month of the year.
January.
Ooh, that's my birth month. So,
Again, it's very because
oh yeah, it's subjective, isn't it?
yeah,
Because I could be like,
I like a New Year. I like a Chantal birthday.
woo. Final category.
Yeah, final one.
Seasons of the year.
Winter.
Remember.
True. Oh,
Not
it's gonna
fun.
break my heart. It's gonna break my heart. But what numbers are we gonna agree on?
It's not high.
It's not high, no, is it?
It's not. What were the answers?
I'm gonna say 4. I mean, my spirit's saying
Could
3.
be lower, you know.
My spirit's saying 3, but I'm saying 4
So
just
we
for
had
difference.
January, winter, and Jaffa cakes.
Yeah.
So I'm saying she hates. I reckon you hate Jaffa cakes. So yeah, I'm gonna say 2.
My spirit's saying 3, but let's go for 2 for diversity.
Okay.
It's a solid 1.
Oh.
And I really need to speak on this because I don't know why Jaffa cakes exist. Are you trying to be a biscuit? Are you trying to be a cake? Just pick one. Pick one side. It's like the Keir Starmer of snacks. Like, just be something. Just
The jelly in the middle.
what is it? Horrendous. Take them out of the shops immediately.
Agreed.
Wow.
Absolutely terrible.
I feel sad.
And I'm really sorry that
I'll be like, wait.
no, go on.
No, you go.
No, honestly.
I think the only thing that I can give you is that, like, when I first bite into one or when I first feel one, it kind of tastes as if like you've left a biscuit pack open.
Exactly, that's horrible.
But like, it's not like any other stale biscuit. Do you know what I mean? But like, it still tastes nice in my opinion. the side eye I'm getting
Like,
right
absolutely not. Absolutely not. And I'm so sorry that January is your birth month because
I'm so sorry. I'm proud.
as in the one thing that I love about January is that, like, at least, you know, you start your new, like, age year and the, like, fresh new year as, like, it all goes together. But that's about it.
I mean,
Like,
I
no
was
one has
born.
money in January.
No one does.
When in January is your birthday?
18th, I'm a Capricorn.
Okay, so people might no,
Getting
still,
money again.
yeah, getting money again, but like it's still a bit of a precarious.
It is a precarious time, but you know,
I know lots of wonderful people born in January, so it's not anything against people born in January. It's just the month.
It's similar to the
It's
seasons.
cold. It's horrible.
cold.
Like, you're poor. Like,
Aw.
there's just no.
And here was I like, hey guys, I'm here to arrive. I'm ready to be born.
Everyone's like, yeah, bro.
Yeah, it's just and again, winter. Obviously, that's a solid one.
Wow,
That
controversially,
really is a
that's my
solid one.
favourite season
Really?
of the year because I like being cold. I prefer being.
Really?
I'd rather be so cold and heat myself up than so hot that I am struggling to breathe and I'm in a heat wave.
Oh my goodness. So when it was a heat wave here, you're one of those people that was saying, I wanted to be cold.
Yeah, I sat by. I actually bought my floor fan. I got into ice.
Yeah, just get a fan and just enjoy. I don't
sleep
understand.
by my fan. I have my window open sometimes, but I have my fan on at night when I sleep.
Oh
which
my
is obviously,
goodness.
like, people are like, "What? You're gonna get sick?" But I'm like, "No, I like being cold because then I can wrap myself up in my 15 blankets and just."
No.
Yeah, it's comforting. Maybe it's part of the Nemo complex. Get some help, Chantal.
That's funny.
But yeah, oh
That's
my
hilarious.
gosh. But again, I hope you enjoyed that lovely segment of Wavelength with Kazvare, Francesco. That's going to be the new theme song now. With Kazvare, Francesco and I. Please, again, I cannot thank you enough, Kazvare, for your time, your support, your effort, your patience. It's been a 7-month baby, really. And I'm so proud that it's been birthed. That's so weird to say, but I'm just happy that the episode is here in the full term and in the atmosphere, and yeah, onwards and upwards really. But I hope to see you. I know I'll see you again at some point in time. Yeah. But yeah, please support Kazvare, please support Francesco in his amazing plights. Do you want to say anything about that, or are you okay with that?
I'll just say Chantal is amazing in the effort that she puts in for these episodes. So
Yes.
You need to give back and subscribe, leave a nice comment, as my dad would say. Leave a nice comment and spread the word.
All right, guys.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. But yeah, I will see you all very, I don't know why I'm sing-songing everything, but I will see you all very, very soon, guys, gals, and days at a time to be confirmed. Please. Oh shit, sorry. Yeah. I thought you were waiting to press the button. One, two, mic check.